it is worth getting into the discussion about the interaction of Torah with a secular conception of the system of government, because there's so much confusion that stems from the fact that all the participants in the argument are not talking in terms about the nature of the argument, that I think really acknowledge the degree to which some points of irresolvable difference have been hidden or sort of buried or swept under the rug. So it's as I was saying already, it's first of all harmful to the discussion for everyone to agree at the outset, including religious Jews, that there's a choice in a sense to be religious or not be religious, and that the secular conception of society is the sort of not yet having chosen a religion blank that we all start with. I think we have to question whether that characterization isn't, in a sense, accepting premises of the religion of secularism, so to speak, that could be questioned or characterized in other terms, because maybe we could just as easily say that everyone, in a sense, if we don't want to use the word religion, everyone's picking a god, or everyone's picking some number of gods, or if we don't want to use the word gods, everyone's picking some set of principles, some set of yardsticks for how to assign virtue and value to things, and that is the real center of the discussion. That's the place where people need to really be focusing their attention and saying, all right, let me tell you about my yardsticks. Let me tell you about my criteria, and you tell me about yours, and we'll figure out if there are any fundamental disagreements about what those are. And if we come to that, then we can start to acknowledge whether we want to use the word gods or whether we want to use something else. We can at least start to get to the bottom of things and understand that this really is about a competition between different sets of standards or different ways of assigning value, and that is no less the case if someone is a member of a secular society who professes not to have a religion or not to have a god. They still have their values, they still have their standards, their yardsticks, their way of saying something is right or something is not right, their points of inflexibility. And if they're not willing to acknowledge that, then it's very hard to have an open discussion, because one person is coming to the conversation and saying, well, my God, for example, is the God of Israel, and he gave me the Torah, and so I'm using the Torah to try to decide what to do. Now tell me about, where your standards are coming from. And someone saying, I don't have a God, I don't have standards, I just use reason, and reason gets me the right answer. And I guess I'll close by saying that I think that the Torah anticipates a situation like this, and I think others have made more or less a similar point before when talking about Migdal Babel, the Tower of Babel, because that is an instance where we have the notion of a group of people who have one language, like it's Safa Achat Udvarim Achadim, right? So one way of talking that is shared by everyone, and that is very much along the lines of how I think in some ways the universalism of secularism, which really at some level is born from the universalism of Christianity, and in many ways incorporated into it a lot of the values of Christianity, and still with some arbitrarity insists on those values in certain ways, and in ways that don't always fully acknowledge the degree to which they're just derived from Christianity. But that it's a notion of people imagining that there is a universal way of getting at what's right, that looks more like technology, right? That building a tower, there's something that's objective about it that we can all share. So we have in the Torah, and the whole earth was a one language and one speech. And I'll skip pasuk. Vayomer ish el re'ehu hava nilbena levanim nisrefa lesrefa v'tahid lahem halevena la'even ve'ha'emar haya lahem lahomer. And they said to another, come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone and slime for the mortar. And so, long story short, they want to make a tower, right? They want to build a city in a tower. And they have a goal of not being dispersed. Like it's about unity. They want to maintain the unity, and it's also about the establishment of a city, which is the idea of a political institution that can just be based on a universal common language. And it treats all of this as though it's like an engineering project. And there are objective things about engineering, right? Like whether a building is standing or falling down is much harder to say as a matter of perspective or opinion, or, I use a different value system or whatever, because we're focusing on things that are almost, material physics, things that can be made more objective, things that seem more scientific. But the whole thing with the universalism of secularism is that it tries to kind of propose that perhaps that science can extend to also questions of what we should be doing. And that's what we see happening here, because the people don't just say that they're going to build a tower because they have some particular use for it, that's just about, narrowly speaking, stacking bricks on top of each other. It says, "Vayomer Hava nivne lanu ir u'migdal v'rosho v'shamayim v'na'aseh lanu shem pen nafutz al pnei chol haaretz." So come, let us build a city and a tower whose top we may reach to heaven. So it's not just a tall tower. It's v'rosho v'shamayim. Its head is in this sphere that approaches that of the divine in some level. So it starts to be about like knowing what one ought to do instead of just what one can do or how to do it. And we will make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed all over the land. So it's about also the idea of preventing disunity of purpose or disunity of language. It's about keeping people all kind of in this universal wrapping that contains everything that's going on. And Na'aseh lanu Shem, again, is this means is this end that starts to be about some kind of loftier purpose than just being about a technical success. It starts to be about meaning or ultimate value. It's along the lines of this aspiration to a divine perspective, like with one's head in the heavens. And so I think the Torah, in a sense, is anticipating the possibility of a world based on technology and based on that which is very material and very objective, like a very modern and scientific and technological world, being susceptible to this. Like you'll notice there's no mention here of the gods that these people have, right? So maybe from other points in what we know about Babylonia, at some point they have gods, right? But here it doesn't say, oh, our idol so-and-so told us to build this tower, so let's go build a tower. It's emanating from something that sounds, that purports to be more sort of length than that. In the same way, again, that the modern expression of secularism tries to present itself, that it doesn't have any gods. It's just emanating from some kind of self-generating reason, or it's a framework that embraces the possibility of all other religious commitments that can happen within this playing field that's being defined, that unifies everything, that brings it under one roof or into one city, or within the view of one tower, or however you want to think about it. So I think the point is, and I hope this to launch a discussion that will extend into other shiurim where we can look at this in sources and particular issues in more detail. But I think what this lands us on at the end of the day is that we have to recognize the temptation or the in a sense the reasonable possibility that there are going to be people who are going to say, unlike you, I have my ideology or my way of viewing the world is unique, because whereas these people have a God and these people have a God and they've all picked their God or picked their religion, I'm just in favor of a system that has no God and that hasn't made any kind of choice of that kind and is just trying to be more sort of universal and be the sort of operating system or language that embraces this all, and it all can happen on that playing field or under this one roof, and that in the view of the Torah is a kind of ideological confusion, and in fact the word mivulbal, right, confused in modern Hebrew, is related to this passage in the Torah, which ends where Hashem confuses the speech of the people engaged in this project. Balal, he confused sfatam, their languages of their speech, and I think that is the critique in a sense. It's not like this in and of itself, this great evil or something. It's that it is a kind of ideological confusion, because to have a God or to have the equivalent of a God, to be serving the equivalent of a God or a set of gods, whether it be reason or whether it be some kind of redux of Christian values that you don't realize are basically a newly sort of recast version of Christianity, or however you want to characterize it, having those commitments and not realizing that you have them, and proposing to others that instead what you have is a universal, not yet religious or not yet committed to a God system that can be the space in which all other kinds of decisions of that sort get made in a society that is open to all such possibilities. That confusion is going to make it difficult for people to get to the bottom of where their points of disagreement are originating, because if one party isn't willing to face where his commitments are coming from and acknowledge, in a sense, which are the sticking points, and say, I don't have an argument for this on a basis that we share, but rather I have chosen to devote myself to this principle, or I've chosen to devote myself to this standard, so to speak. I've devoted myself to this God or that God or what have you, and now we understand, where each of our sticking points lie, and we can sort of find out what's possible as a result of that. If one party isn't willing to face that, then things get into an intractable situation as far as conversation.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.